Hello, I'm down in the shop trying to deal with a problem that we have in the bus. Uh, so the bus ribs, or the bus ceiling is held in with screws that go into the ribs of the bus. And it's created a thermal bridge, meaning that there's a connection of metal all the way from the outside to the inside. So when it's warm in the bus and it's cold outside, we get condensation on all of the screw holes or all the screw heads that are holding in the ceiling. And in one case, when we were on our last trip, it actually got frost on the nail on the screw heads. So that's a problem. So we have to break that bridge. And I'm embarrassed to say that I actually knew this would be a problem when I was doing it, but I figured why not make the most rigid thing. There's been a lot of problems with the way that I did my ceiling, but anyway, this should be one way of this should be a decent way to fix it. So it's really cold right now, and we're getting a little bit of condensation on the screw head, so I thought this would be a good chance to show you what it is that we're trying to avoid. This screw head got really wet from condensation, and you can see that the moisture is just kind of wicking into the wood. Eventually that's going to turn green and gross, which is what I'm trying to avoid. So that's why I am doing this project. So I bought this big board of cherry. You can see it over there, right there. And I used the table saw, ran it through the table saw, and created all of these little strips that are about 2 inches wide and about 3/8 of an inch thick. I'm going to create a bead over the ceiling, over all of the screw heads, and then we're going to take the strips and put them up on the ceiling. This should prevent any warm air from condensing on the screw heads because they won't be exposed to the air anymore. They'll be hidden behind these decorative strips. So right now I've cut all the strips. I'm going through and sanding all of them, and then I'm going to be putting some boiled linseed oil to finish them, and then one at a time installing them on all of the ribs of the bus and covering all the screw holes, and hopefully that will help with some of our condensation problems. Alright, so I've got some boiled linseed oil now on here. We got one coat. I'm going to let this dry for 24 hours, and then we're going to put another coat on, and then it's time to start installing the strips. Okay, so I'm down in the shop. These are all the strips. They're ready to go. They're ready to be installed in the bus for the ceiling to cover the ribs, or to cover the screw heads. And to do that, I am working on this. This bar will sit up on the lip. This board will sit up on the lip, and then this piece will hold it up in place, although the compression of the board itself should probably be enough so that they adhere properly to the ceiling. Okay, so we have one strip in here already. It's not attached at all, so what I've got to do is use the adhesive all along the line, stick it up there, and then I'm going to use this board to kind of snug it into place on the sides. I've got these boards which will be attached to this board and kind of hold it up into the corners, hold it nice and snug up against the wall. And then I've got this board, which fits right here, sort of. I'll have to cut it a little probably, but the idea is to put some pressure on the board so that it is held up perfectly tight to the ceiling. Basically, I'm shimming stuff up. Like over here, I needed to add a little shim because after all the adjustments, like it became loose. To kind of push it up hard against the ceiling. I have a piece of the original ceiling, just a scrap left over that makes a nice curve so we have like a nice, somewhat even pressure being applied to the top. Let's hope that this holds, and when I take down all of the riffraff here, that it will hold itself up in place on the ceiling. Well, it held up pretty good on this end. It does look like it's separated a little bit. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. I think this came out good. Well, just as I said that, everything was good and took the shims off. It started separating right here. It's a lot of pressure right there. Alright, so I'm going to give this one more go. I put on some more glue and just put extra pressure on the corners, and we'll see if that holds it in place a little better. We'll give it one more day to kind of cure and see how that works out. Right, so the one board that we put in is not looking too great. It's kind of popping out, so we're gonna have to think of something else. I may just have to kind of suck it up and leave it ugly. But I think later on I'm going to try to actually pull it down and see if I can shape it. I did get a steam box or a steam generator so that I can steam all of the ribs that are going to have to go all the way to the edge, and see if I can get them to make that curve without cracking. The problem is they've all been finished already. They all have this boiled linseed oil on them that kind of gives them their color. It's supposed to protect them. So I don't know if it is actually going to work. We'll have to just give it a shot and see what happens. In the meantime, there are a couple strips that don't require, they don't need to do the whole curve. They're just from here to here. So it's just a very minor curve that they can definitely flex to. So I've glued in 3 of them. I'm using these 2 shower curtains to kind of hold these 2 in place in a couple spots where they kind of dip down a little bit just to make sure that it gets maximum adhesion. And I'm just going to kind of leave it here for today. I think tomorrow or whenever I get a chance again, I'm going to come out here, finish the last 2 strips that don't require curves, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with the curve, with the ones that do need to make the curve, how I'm going to be steaming them, and hope that that works. So yesterday I took down all of these trim pieces that I had glued and screwed into place because I was thinking that I could probably hold in the boards with compression, just have them like resting on top of this wood on either side. That's proving to be unrealistic because we broke boards that way. We broke 2 boards. So instead of doing that, we're going to steam boards one at a time and kind of hold them in place, use the bus itself as the form, and then once they kind of like settle into that shape, I'm going to glue them with the same adhesive that I've been using for everything else here, which is Loctite Premium. It's supposed to be really good, but I've been having some problems with it. I think that these are not the ideal conditions for it. But so what I'm going to do is put the trim back on so that I can use my curve jig like I did for the first one. And hopefully I can actually use that to just kind of put the steamed pieces up into the ceiling, apply some pressure so that they will form to that shape. Give it a shot. Okay, this is my steam bag. So I bought this steamer that is used for a steam box, but I've also seen people use a bag. So I created this plastic envelope for my board. I've only got one in there right now, and I have it on, and it'll take a while, but it's supposed to start steaming, and in about 2 hours it will have steamed the board and made it really flexible so that maybe I can actually just push it right up into place in the ceiling, hold it in place, and it'll kind of form to that shape. But we'll see how that works out. Alright, so the steam bag is really going. It's pretty hot on this end. It's nice and inflated, and steam is traveling all the way down the tube and getting to the end, and water is starting to drip out the tip. So it looks like it's doing what I want it to do. It also is starting to smell like that linseed oil. One thing about this is that I'm using a board that was already finished, and I suspect I'll either have to refinish it or that this won't work because it's already been finished. Okay, so disconnecting the steam. This is how quickly you have to move the thing. I'm wearing welding gloves because it's very hot. Go ahead and slide the board out, and we're going to go slip it into place. Alright, here we go. Place. Now I'll use my jig. Just going to use for shaping it. This one's a little off. So it flexed to the curve pretty well. Now I'm just going to kind of hold it up in place using various shims to get it to sit. Nicely. Oh, sorry. it up in a moment. So I've got these really thin pieces that I can use to make this a little bit more snug. Actually, that feels pretty good. Maybe that'll be fine. This side. Yeah, it looks like the top could use a little more. So it's no glue, obviously. We're just kind of holding it in place so that it gets used to this shape. And then we will glue it in about an hour. Put this one here. No. I think that's good. That won't crack. So there you go. The steam bent piece of trim went in a lot easier than the other piece, and it didn't break. And it's all cemented in now, and I'm just gonna let it cure overnight at least. And yeah, ready to move on to the next one. I let it sit for a day with the adhesive, and it looks great. I think I've got one spot that's kind of squeezing out right there, but the rest of it, oh, one more spot right there. The rest of it looks real good. It made that curve really nice. So this is the way to do it. These are the last two strips that have been installed. They're going to sit overnight as I let the construction adhesive dry. This took days, multiple days. So there's that one and this one. I had them steam in the same bag at the same time because I was confident I could get them both in there. Anyway, this took days. I used the same jig for every one that spanned the entire length from side to side. But I had to cut it down. As you can see, it's got like an angle cut down there. I had to cut it down as I went because in the back here, it's actually shorter from that corner to this corner because the wall is higher than the trim that's up in front. And then this one is even shorter because it sits on top of the rails for the bed lift. So overall, it's come out pretty good. There's gonna need to be some touch-ups for the concrete, or not the concrete, but the construction adhesive in places where it's kind of squeezing through, which is mostly up here in the front. You know about that spot right over here. See how it's kind of ugly? I'm going to need to shave that down with a Dremel tool, and I'm still kind of figuring out if there is something that I can really do to hide it a little better. But overall, it worked out really well. I just was very careful on all of the rails other than this one to wipe off any excess, and it seemed to work pretty well. There's a couple of spots, but that will be tomorrow's project if I have time. I went through a couple of tools with my Dremel before I found something that kind of works. What I'm using is that same disc that I used to cut out the windows a while back. It's just these little angle grinder discs, and I'm kind of running it down the seam right in here in all the spots where the glue is kind of squeezing through. Like here's one that you can still see. And then when I there's a couple of spots where I kind of marred the wood. But even with that angle grinder, you can kind of like smooth it out. The color isn't exactly the same, but I think that it's not very noticeable. I masked off all of the trim pieces, and I'm going to be wiping them down with some more boiled linseed oil. When I bent them in the steamer kind of removed some of the finish, so they look kind of spotty. I don't know if you can really tell in the video. They've got these like light spots, dark spots. It's a little bit ugly, and I'm not so sure that these are even still protected. Here you can really tell on this board. So I'm going to be wiping them down with another coat of boiled linseed oil, and hopefully that will solve the problem. Boiled linseed oil all over all the cherry pieces, including the trim. I just did that because I'm here and I might as well add another coat. So everything is looking really good. I can actually pull down the tape now, and that's it. I'll show you what it looks like all finished. So as you can see, we're all done with the trim project. I did put in a couple of hangers. These ones are attached to the metal of the bus, so these might get some condensation, but I think I might put some coating on this that might prevent that. But other than that, all of the screw heads are covered, which should prevent condensation, and the sealing looks pretty good. There are a couple of rough spots. This is the worst spot, which I kind of knew was going to come out bad. That was the part where it was like really squeezing through. I kind of like I nicked the sealing a little bit and had to kind of even it out, but now it's all colored weird. But I don't think most people are going to see that when they come in. I think mostly this is going to be pretty invisible. So